Hi, I'm Shelley.
And I'm Kate, and you're listening to One Lump or Two,
the boldest breast cancer podcast yet.
Join us each week as we offer an intimate glimpse into the challenges and triumphs of facing breast cancer head-on in our 30s.
In Series 2, we're going to be joined by you, our listeners, and some experts in the field to help us all feel a little less alone and a lot more informed.
Now, let's pull back that curtain and dive in. Hello, welcome back to One Lump or Two. Today, we've got a story episode for you. We'll be hearing from Emma. She was 39 when she was diagnosed with stage 3 triple negative breast cancer. She has turned her whole experience with cancer on its head, and she has written a book. So today she's going to tell us all about her story, and if you would like to buy her book, you can find it on Amazon, and we'll include the link in the bio. Welcome to Your Stories.
Welcome back, everybody, and welcome, Emma. Thank you so much for joining us. Do you want to just tell us, kick off the conversation just by telling us a little bit about you, who you are, what you do, kind of, when you were diagnosed, and a little bit about your experience?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to talk more openly and honestly about breast cancer because I think that's really important. And my sort of mission in life is really to sort of reframe cancer and come up with a new narrative around cancer. I was diagnosed 9 years ago, but I was one of the healthiest, fittest people I knew working at Nike in Portland, Oregon. I was in a bit of a high-pressured job, to be fair, 2 young kids and an unhealthy relationship. So I think those combination of those things led me to find a lump myself, which turned out to be stage 3 triple negative. And then my sort of journey has carried on from there. I'm very happy to be here today, able to talk about it. So thanks for having me.
No, you're welcome. Thank you so much for coming on. So you kind of said that you found the lump yourself. Were you like actively checking, or did you just kind of come across it?
I would love to say I was actively checking. And of course, that's what I recommend everyone should do. But I wasn't. I was just in the shower, having a normal shower, and then found a lump. And I think what's interesting is I had in my head that a lump for breast cancer would be this round sort of pea-shaped thing. And mine wasn't. It was like a frayed rope on the left side. And so I could sort of move my hand over it. And I went to the doctors. My husband at the time, thankfully, encouraged me to go. And then my GP didn't really think so much of it. She said, I'm going to send you for a biopsy, but I think it's fine. I don't think it's anything sinister.
Is that exactly what they said to me and Kate as well?
And then the thing is, those lovely biopsies, you go there and they dig around quite a bit and you think, gosh, that's painful. And then mine was the end of the day. And when you see the nurses' faces, you sort of, I knew. We stayed late, and then they didn't say definitively at that point. And I then went off to one of my best friend's 40th birthday parties for the whole weekend. But I spent the whole time, if I look back, and I did tell my friend, one of my besties, Sophie, what had just happened. And I really, told lots of people I loved them a lot. And I was quite conscious of the fact that this group of friends would be there for my 2 young daughters if the diagnosis came through. And then we got back home to Portland, and it was positive.
Wow. What did you kind of feel in that moment?
I think, the C word, the ground falls away in front of you, underneath you, and you don't know what to do. You don't know who to turn to. You're sort of a bit lost because as we should do in a way, you think it's never going to happen to me. And so it's a shock for sure, despite having that, that inkling and subconsciously knowing that things weren't quite right. Just you shock and disbelief, to be honest.
Yeah, I'll bet. Did you tell your children, or did you try and keep that slightly quiet? Because I too have 2 young children who we told.
Yeah, I told, I talked to my husband at the time, and we decided to tell him straight away. And I think that's one of the hardest conversations I've ever had to have. In fact, it probably could be the hardest conversation I've ever had to have. And they were so different. So 2 girls, Millie and Charlie, one was 5, one was 7. And Millie said, "Are you going to die, Mummy?" And that question just completely floored me because I didn't expect it to come from someone so small. And I don't know if I'd really thought about it so directly, but then I couldn't lie to her. So I really had to sort of say, I'm going to fight, we're all going to fight, we're in this together, and I'll do my best to get a positive result. So being positive, but also not being able to lie, you know. And then the other daughter, Charlie, said, "Oh, I'll fix you, Mama." So then,
my youngest became very nurse-like quite quickly. She's a very caring human being anyway, and if she grows up to be a nurse, then the nursing profession have struck absolute gold. But she took it kind of like upon herself to be responsible for, and she still is to this day, reminding me to take medication, reminding me not to do things I shouldn't be doing. So I'm glad we told them, but in some sense I feel like I maybe stole a little bit of their childhood from them. But you can't hide something like that from them, especially if you're going to go through some really rigorous treatment.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I knew my hair was going to fall out. And I said, "Does anyone else want to shave their heads?" And nobody did. But
surprising, really.
My 7 and 5-year-olds are like, "Yeah, no thanks." So yeah, I think you're going. I knew basically that I was going to have 4 months of chemo, 8 rounds every 2 weeks, and so I knew I need to sort of call on my friends and pull in my friends, and that my family was going to be really important. But it's tough for them, really tough for them, especially at a young age, you know. And I found it hard that I couldn't parent the way I wanted to parent during that time.
Yeah, because you're just so knackered, aren't you, at the end of the day? Like, I don't have kids. I've got nieces and nephews, and like we kind of had to tell them about it, but well, I didn't. I let their mums and dads do that. Pass the buck. But I don't have kids of my own, and I can't imagine like the way I was when I was going through treatment. Like, I was exhausted. I barely got out of bed some days. I can't imagine trying to have to like parent whilst going through it. Like, it must have been so difficult.
I think it was, and they, you know, I look back and think, ask them about their memories, because we talk about it quite a bit now, which I think is, for us, is healthy. And they remember coming in to see me, and because they were still going to school and I was going through chemo, they remember, which sort of breaks my heart, they remember coming in and only kind of being able to hug my legs, their hands and everything. Post-COVID, people are more used to that, but I think pre-COVID it was quite new, and they didn't want to get any germs. So,
oh, bless. So you were in the US when you found the lump. Did you go through all of your treatment in the US as well?
I did. I was working for Nike at the time. So it was interesting because I was checking in with my friends in the UK, checking in with friends in France, and trying to compare notes between different treatment options. And the good thing about the US is, if you can afford to, or if you've got good insurance, then you have a bit more say in terms of what you want to do. But every cancer is so different. You know, one thing I learned is that everyone's different. Every situation is completely different. But also with triple negative, they said, go for chemo first and then have a mastectomy. And I opted to go for a double at the end of 4 months.
Yeah. And can you just explain to the listeners who might not know just a little bit about what triple negative means?
Well, it's one of the most aggressive, fastest growing cancers. And what's interesting is there's no hormone receptor in terms of the cell, the cancerous cells. So what that meant was that it's basically quite aggressive, but it also can respond quite well to chemo. But it means that for the first 5 years post-treatment, that you have to get through the first 5 years really to reduce the risk significantly.
No, because your treatment is like limited in the sense that like me and Kate are both on like hormone blockers. We're both in the menopause, and that's obviously to reduce our risk of the cancer returning. Whereas with triple negative, because it doesn't have any hormone receptors, you don't have the option of any of those treatments.
Yes, exactly. And I think mine was environmental. So I was really quite cancer aware beforehand. But then having got that diagnosis, I was even more aware. You know, I lived on a golf course where they were spraying pesticides and so forth. But I was looking at everything in my lifestyle and questioning everything, which is tricky, and I wouldn't recommend it. But because my diagnosis was environmental, I sort of went down a little bit down that rabbit hole to start with, and then just got on with what I could control, and I took an integrated approach, sort of East and Western medicine as well, and did a lot of things aside from chemotherapy, so body, mind and spirit, really, to keep myself going.
I was just thinking about like the environmental factor and stuff, and how both Shelley and I were young and fit and healthy as well. And I don't think I haven't gone down that rabbit hole myself, but I don't think there were many environmental factors probably in my life at the time. So I find it really interesting that you had like the awareness, and especially at the time, it's not something that I've ever even really considered.
No, me neither. How did you find out that it was environmental? Is it just something that the doctor told you, or was there tests that you had?
Yeah, the doctor said it as part of the diagnosis. Obviously, things like stress are not very helpful in terms of general health, and I was stressed. I ran with my phone down the front of my bra half the time. Sugar, I knew I was probably, on adrenaline a lot of the time with work and lack of sleep. But who knows? And that's something I sort of continue to live with. But that's something that I try to, in terms of anxiety and stress, try to do the best, 80% of the time with things like diet and exercise.
Yeah, it is. A diet is kind of one of those things that it has been, like, obviously a healthy diet has been proven, but it's interesting that you mentioned kind of sugar and also like having your phone in your bra as well, because those two are kind of like myths, I think, in some way. Obviously sugar's not great, but I think the scaremongering when people say like, oh, sugar feeds cancer, I think can be, I don't know, not dangerous, but I think it puts a lot of like stress and anxiety onto people sometimes, I think, when really it's kind of just like a balanced diet is obviously all you need. So it's interesting to hear you say that the doctor kind of mentioned those things to you as things that you were potentially doing wrong, when I've kind of heard the opposite, I guess.
I think for me, yeah, I had a really good natural doctor as well. And so I liked what they were saying in terms of being able to control some of those elements that I went through. And so for me, sometimes cancer takes a lot away from you, or you feel a bit sort of medicalized, of course, and it can be quite a lonely journey. And for me, taking a bit more control and a bit more mindfulness around my food, and I did quite a strict low sugar diet during chemo, but then I fasted the day before, the day of, and the day after. Okay. To try and increase the effectiveness of the chemo, and because my nutritionist at the time recommended it. So you do what you do with the information you have at the time, and you do your best, and you just keep going, one day at a time when you go through that stuff.
100%. My diet when I was going through it consisted of like fishless fingers and chips, like really beige food, like anything I could just stomach, really.
Some things taste horrible when you go through treatment.
They really do, yeah.
I completely lost my sense of taste, and like the inside of my mouth when I was on chemo was peeling all the time. And there are still foods now that I can't, like, the thought of thinking about eating them makes me want to vomit, in the same way I violently vomited when I had them tasteless for the first time. Because it just, one day I was eating fine, and the next day everything I put in my mouth felt funny, and it took me almost all day to realize that I'd lost the sense of taste. And then as soon as I'd realized it was gone and I was just left with the feel of the food in my mouth, that's when I was like, oh God, no, there's a lot of things I no longer eat.
Yeah, I can relate to that. Things for me tasted quite metallic, and I think post chemo now, because the way I sometimes describe it is it's sort of the mixture of seasickness, hangover, and jet lag all rolled into one. Yeah. With a little bit of burning up inside sometimes. And now, even if I get on a boat and it's a bit choppy, I feel seasick a lot faster than I did before. And it's the same kind of thing with food too. Some things are just, not ready to revisit.
Yeah, it's not fair, is it? Cancer just takes so much away from you.
I just want to be able to eat pulled pork again.
Yeah. So you said you took like a kind of not nutritional, what did you say, holistic and kind of spiritual approach to it as well. Like, what kind of stuff were you kind of doing alongside like treatment?
Yeah, well, infrared saunas. I did a bit of Gerson therapy. I did quite a relatively strict diet, as much as I could, as healthy as I could. I did lots of juicing. Mind and spirit tried to find a happy place. Yeah, when I could get to the beach, I would go to the beach. When I could get to yoga, I would go to yoga. And I think when your life is so busy and there's other stuff going on, it's really nice to be able to. They were the only times really I sort of broke down and had a cry, was at the end of yoga on some random stranger who'd come into the class next to me. But that was the moment where I really sort of let go a bit, and that, yeah, I think that was important for me at the time.
Yeah, well, I think that's what yoga's all about, really, isn't it? You do kind of like release a lot of emotions in yoga, especially kind of like towards the end when you're doing like the full like relaxation. It's one of my favorite parts of yoga, is the laying down at the end. What is an infrared sauna?
Yeah, never heard of that.
No.
So it's different type of panels inside the sauna. So it's a dry sauna. But the infrared rays penetrate deeper, so you almost feel as though you're warming up from inside.
Okay.
And it's just a higher level of detox. I wasn't allowed to do anything that my doctor didn't say I could do. My dad's a retired doctor, and it's funny because at the beginning I said, well, I don't know if I'll do chemo, and he just nearly choked on his food, said, I think you really might want to reconsider that statement. He and my oncologist had a good traffic light system where I would suggest something and then they'd come to an agreement between, the three of us, around what I could do and what I couldn't do. So I took things like medicinal mushrooms, cordyceps and turkey tail. I've no idea whether that worked, but somebody nice in Whole Foods told me about it, so I started doing it. And of course, all of these comments that I'm making come with a huge caveat, which is make sure you check with your doctor first before you things. But for me, it felt good just to have that element of control and to feel that I was doing something, and to believe that it was making a difference.
Yeah, I think that's important for a lot of people, is to have some kind of element of control, because I think cancer and the treatment takes a lot of that control away from me. Obviously, you always have a choice with the treatments that you have, but for the most part, it's like, here's the chemo you're having, here's the surgery you're having, here's the radiotherapy you're having, here's the medicine you need to be on. So yeah, I think for a lot of people, it is kind of nice to feel like you're doing something to like help yourself along in that journey.
Yeah, and it depends on your medical team. You know, I had one oncologist who was a stand-in at one point, and I had two of my friends in the office when we had our meeting. It was a regular sort of checkup and infusion. And I said, oh, I went for a run. That's all right, isn't it? And he said, I don't know why anyone runs, and da-da-da-da. And when, you know, my friends were just thinking, he's got to stop talking right now because this isn't going to go down well. I don't think he wanted really to see me again after they sort of, you know, supported me in that context and told him that actually if I wanted to run, then I would run. But I think it's important that you find a good medical team that you can bounce ideas off of and work out what's going to suit you the best.
I don't know how much choice we get in our medical teams and things like that here. I mean, I know I certainly didn't necessarily question anything. I have inquired about changing my oncologist post my active treatment after a couple of the things he said to me during treatment. At one point, it makes me so angry. At one point, I was sat in his office and I was explaining to him the levels of pain I was in from my hormone medication and how I couldn't get out of bed. I was a 31-year-old woman who had been made immobile by medication, and all I wanted to be able to do was get up, be a parent, and go to work. Like, I wasn't asking to be able to do anything extracurricular and be running again, exercise. I just wanted to be able to get out of bed and be a parent and get out of bed and work. And he told me that I couldn't have it all. And that was the point. I was like, firstly, watch me. Secondly, I don't think I would like you on my team anymore, because that wasn't what I wanted to hear. It wasn't what I needed to hear either. And I think had I been in a different headspace on that day, that would have been hugely detrimental. I'd kind of gone into it expecting a bit of a fight and fueled by the level of pain I was in. But had it been one of the days where I was just letting that defeat me, I'd just been like, okay.
I totally agree. And I had the same experience because someone at work said we were meant to go and play golf, and golf was really one of my happy places because when you're playing golf, you're not a cancer patient, you're just a golfer, even though you look like an emu, or I looked like an emu wandering around the golf course. And I definitely turned a few heads, what's that person doing playing golf? But he said to me, oh, I didn't think you'd be doing that type of thing anymore since, you've got cancer. And I went, oh, and that just got fire in my belly to really say, well, I'm going to show you. So I agree with you. Sometimes the things that people say that are not very well thought out, if you're in the right headspace at the time, they can really, encourage you and propel you to show them what for.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I haven't seen him since, and I don't plan on seeing him since. So
no, I've been lucky with my oncologist. I really love her, but I think with the NHS, it's trickier because obviously you're not paying. Obviously, if you can afford, or you have insurance in the UK, obviously you can go private. But God bless the NHS. Like, thank God we have, because there's no way I would have been able to afford cancer treatment if we didn't. But it does come with a few kind of caveats that you don't really get to choose who your medical team are, and it's just kind of a postcode lottery as to like the services that you get given and stuff like that. But
I think still feeling you can question what people say is really important. And if you need to, like I did, bring your mates along to back you up.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think me and Kate had the lovely, unique experience that obviously we were diagnosed through COVID. So sadly, that wasn't an option for us to bring people to our appointments. But advice for people. Yeah, bring back up, bring a whole cohort of people with you.
Just take the whole tribe. Just be like, we're all here.
Absolutely. And I got dressed up to go to chemo, and so everyone who came with me had to get dressed up too. And my now ex-husband, but my husband at the time, wasn't really, I didn't want him to come to chemo for various reasons. So my bestie, Nikki, came with me, and about halfway through, you sort of get through the first ones and you're counting them down, checking them off. But halfway through, I thought, I don't know if I can do another half. And I'm only halfway through. And so she said, right, come on, we're going to dress you up. And so we went to chemo as Dolly Parton and Farrah Fawcett.
Oh, amazing.
It was amazing. And just to see the look on the nurses' faces, at first they thought you're in the wrong ward, but then they were just so nice and lovely, and we made them smile, and we kept doing it. Every time when we drove to hospital, all dressed up, and we did 80s one time, and then we did Showgirls for the last one. But Nikki's driving is so bad, I thought she was going to kill me on the way to hospital. And then we dressed, ridiculously. It's hilarious. And then one time we had playlists and we did chemo karaoke in the car on the way. And one time we were dressed as 80s, and I hadn't quite, got my needle in my port to get the infusion. And then there was a big fire alarm, and all these firemen arrived on trucks, and we got evacuated from the chemo ward with everyone else. And then the whole hospital was outside because there was a fire downstairs in imaging. And it was just hilarious because we were standing there in costume again for no apparent reason other than to try and make me and the nurses laugh. But yeah, that was a funny one. Good memory.
I think that's great. Yeah, I think it's so important to you just got to do what you need to do to kind of like lift your mood and get you kind of, prepared and like amped up for chemo. Like
completely. A friend of mine reframed it as going to the spa, and she had an eye mask and furry slippers and all the other things she needed to do when she was there. But yeah, whatever it takes.
So you still work for Nike, or you've kind of given up that high pressured?
I worked all the way through, and that for me was, I wanted to, and I needed the money, and it felt, despite being told, be careful and what have you, going to the office and actually hugging people and having that human contact for me was really important. And it helped a lot. People do say some strange things as well, of course, but the majority very well-meaning and really kind. So that helped a lot. And to have that sort of consistency and routine, so you're not going crazy in your head, was really, really good to be distracted.
Because we were diagnosed with COVID, we were at home anyway. So I think I went back to the office twice between COVID restrictions loosening enough for us to be back in an office before I was diagnosed. And when I went back into the office after my treatment and I was a little bit stronger, like that first day in the office and seeing people and hugging people and just talking to people, I had this huge like, oh my God, if I could have done this during treatment, if going into the office had been an option for me, I think I would have, because I had gone absolutely batshit crazy in the four walls of my house already for 2 years, and then I did another year of it, but being really, really poorly. And it just gives you such a lift, doesn't it? Like just people and normality almost, because there is nothing else about your life at that time that is remotely normal.
Yeah, completely. It really does. It's and I think having that human contact and having people check in on you is really nice as well. And having different conversations, you know, about, could be whatever it's about, but just having a bit of banter in the office does help.
Definitely. Yeah, you do just want to feel normal, don't you? And you just want people to like talk to you normally as well. Like I used to hate when people would kind of, you get like the head tilt, like the sympathy, and that I absolutely hated it.
Oh, me too. I mean, my worst question was, how are you feeling?
Yeah.
And the point where my daughter, my 7-year-old at the time, got to a point where she'd look up and say, Mummy hates that question.
Good on her.
Love that. I love that. Yeah.
It's so good. And then me and my sisters were sort of on the, you know, WhatsApp family chat talking about answers you could give, like, oh, like the worst hangover and come down in Ibiza history or something, you know, or like a dog on heat, or just ridiculous things. But it's very well meaning, but it's weird because I think, unlike my eldest daughter who said, "Are you going to die, Mummy?" people want to say that's what they're thinking, but and then it's difficult for them to know what to say. So you get a bit stuck. There are all sorts of comments in the moment that it's hard, as you're going through it, it's hard to respond to.
Yeah, we've had
Definitely.
I had someone send me good vibes once. I genuinely just sat there. So I was in a meeting with her at the time and stared at her, and I was like, I don't know what I meant to do with that. Like, I know you mean
good
well,
vibes.
but
They're gonna heal me. I'm cured now because of your good vibes.
there's a handful of people at work who were in that meeting and regularly sign off emails to me with sending good vibes, and it still makes you rage.
It's good to nice to be able to laugh, and you know, afterwards.
How long have you been like out of treatment now?
A while, nearly 9 years. So I've been celebrating recently, which has been great.
Oh,
and
great.
It took me that long. Yeah. It's a bit of a landmark, really. So it's funny because when you go through it, you don't realize there are actually a handful of people wherever you go who have been through a similar sort of journey and are kind of, but much further ahead. And I always loved it when people came up to me in my bald head and said, I was where you were 15 years ago or 20 years ago or 25. And that's always really, really nice to hear.
Oh, that's so nice. Well, congratulations on the 9 years. That's really great. And hopefully we'll both get to 9 years at some point soon as well.
In
another 6 years.
Yeah, 6-7 years. And you've obviously just released a book. So firstly, congratulations, well done for writing a book. I couldn't do it. So you're great. How come now? Is it something that you had been working on since your diagnosis, or did it just suddenly feel like the right time to memorialize, I guess, like how you got yourself through it?
Yeah, I think writing a book for me was about pulling together a collection of anecdotes or funny stories and a little bit of helpful advice, hopefully, that I get asked for regularly. So at any one time, I have, sad to say, 2 or 3 people that I know are going through some type of cancer. It could be breast cancer, it could be colorectal or bladder, for example, some of the people I'm working with at the moment. And I kind of cancer coach them. And so it's really, obviously pro bono, but it's really a privilege and an honor to be able to have those conversations and to kind of walk that journey with other people who've gone through what you went through. And there's some, lots of similarities, and it's great to be able to share, I think, with someone who can relate, because often your family and your closest friends can't. And so really the book is pulling together all of that information and that advice and some funny stories into one place. so that it can be shared with more people.
I think it's great. I mean,
Mhm.
Shelley and I've said before that once you're thrown into this world, right, and it's so hard to find non-medical advice and real world experience to help bring you through it, because you can look up the charity websites and everything, and they'll give you all the tools and stuff to help you through, but sometimes it's really nice to hear it from a person. I think
Yeah.
that's one of the reasons we started doing this podcast, because we wanted to fill the hole that we felt we were missing during our journey.
Yeah, and I cheekily put it in WH Smith's bestsellers position as I was walking through the airport the other day and took a photo. But actually, you have to go to Amazon. But yeah, it's one of those things, and particularly, I was lucky. A friend of mine at the time took lots of pictures of me looking ridiculous in hospital, and part of it is to say, use the work I was doing and the experience I had from working at Nike and doing brand and strategy, and I kind of put a strategy in place for myself during cancer, just to keep that sort of focus, really. And the first one, and I talk about this in the book, first one is really fight to win, because I think that's a choice as well. And for me, it was a fight. And there was that competitive spirit, which I had from, the athlete mindset and people at work, pushing me. And then the second one was find humor in the darkness, because a lot of this stuff is pretty dark. You don't really think about death, and you don't really think about what do you do when you get cancer and what happens afterwards until it hits you in the face. Finding humor in the darkness, luckily, I can laugh at myself, and that was very helpful at the time.
Yeah.
Somehow muster up a bit of joy for the kids, so to try and keep things a bit more normal for them, as you go through. One of them looked at me once and said, "Mummy, I keep looking at your head and I keep thinking these baby chicks are going to pop out of the top." Okay, thanks. So you have to laugh. And the third one was to protect the girls, so my daughters, and say, in some way, be as real as possible, but also look after them and take care of them and find family and friends and so forth to do what I couldn't do, what I wasn't capable of doing at the time. That helped to have a bit of a structure in place. And that's part of the reason I wrote the book too, to sort of think, okay, well, what was useful looking back? And things like being able to say no to things, and having the courage to pull your team together on your crew and work out who can do which jobs. Because everyone, ultimately, a lot of people want to help, but they really don't know. Looking back, I had a difficult conversation, maybe the second or third most difficult one I've had, with my mum, because my mum was really, as you would be, of course, really scared and didn't really know how to deal with the diagnosis. And she came and stayed with me and took care of me and took me to chemo and what have you. But she just kept crying all the time. So I had to have a conversation with her to say, look, Mum, I don't have an ounce of energy to support you. Please, can you right now? And then she was amazing. She stopped. She just went into complete sort of doing mode, not really thinking as much, I think, but really, really helpful after that.
Yeah, my parents did something similar. I think I, a bit like you, almost immediately put a strategy in place, and mine was, we're laughing our way through this, and you are only to do what I need you to do. And I kind of set my mum and my dad and my sister and my partner, like, this is what I expect from you over the coming months, and what I don't need from you is you guys crying on me, because I'm going to be crying enough. And I'm such an empathetic person that I just take other people's emotions and feelings on almost in an instant. And I just knew from the fact that, like, I'd just had one of the worst bits of news I'm ever going to get in a room on my own, and that I was going to have to do my treatment on my own in the hospital, that I didn't have the choice not to protect myself emotionally. To some extent. They sat down, had a conversation, and promised each other they weren't going to cry in front of me again, and they didn't until Shelley and I sat down and interviewed them for the podcast. And even then, like, after we stopped recording, I said to my dad, I was like, I kind of didn't need you to cry then, because you've just set me off.
But I mean, that's amazing, isn't it? It's those tough conversations that I think, if you can have them, then I think it really helps. And it helps them too, I hope.
I think so.
I think so, because I think all people want to do is feel useful and take care of you. So I think if you're kind of like, being explicit and like telling people, like, this is what I want you to do, I think people appreciate it. Because otherwise they are just in this like I'm supposed to be looking after you, but I don't know what to do, I don't know what to say. So yeah, I think it's really important.
First, it's really difficult to tell someone you've got cancer and then not to cry on you, and then you're the one that supporting them. That's hard. And the other one, I remember a friend telling me, I loved what you said about do just what I ask and no more. Because a friend said one of her mates kept coming around and insisting that she marched around the houses with her. She really didn't want to go for a walk, but this friend really, really wanted to do that for her and be helpful. But in the reality of it was the opposite, you know.
Yeah, it can be hard because everyone just wants to help. People, I think sometimes it's really easy to get so blinded by the like, someone I love is in pain, I need to help, that you forget that how you want to help may not be the way they need helping. Like, I definitely had some friends who were like, oh, we'll go do your shopping, we'll do this. And I was like, no, I actually need that semblance of normality. Like, I have to go and do the shop, so come with me, and if you've got 2 hours out of your day because I'm going to sit down for an hour and a half of this trip, great, do that. But if you want to take the thing away from me, don't, because that's more isolating. But because they're not the ones going through it, and touch wood, none of them are ever going to experience that, they're just trying to help in the way that they know best, and that is normally to take things off someone's plate.
I mean, childcare was useful for me, bringing around meals was good, but then we ended up with like so many mac and cheeses and casseroles. They just refused to eat anymore. We had to buy a whole new freezer to fit everything in. But it was useful. I mean, that it was very useful and very kind and well-meaning. But someone said to me, look, everyone, you're going to get so much. So people are going to give things to you. They're going to do things for you. Don't worry about saying thank you to everybody, and don't stress about saying thank you or writing thank you notes or whatever, because people understand, and just focus on doing the treatments and getting better.
Yeah, you've got to look after number one at the end of the day. Like, when you're diagnosed with cancer, like, it is all about you.
I just remember thinking back, because I've seen it recently as well with a friend of mine, and everyone sent her flowers. And I don't know what you found, but I had this room full of flowers, and they all sort of wilted in front of me, and I had to watch them sort of, die in front of me. And the irony and the metaphor was not lost on me. And it was quite, and then of course you have to go and clear them all away and throw them out.
Yeah.
Adds insult to injury. But the best gift I got was from a very good friend of mine called Lenny, who bought me a leather look catsuit, and with a zip from chin to tail.
Wow.
Which was really something else. And I thought, actually, I'm going to wear that. So I went for a girls' night out and I wore it. And I'd started going through chemo, and it was. I just thought, yeah, sod it. I'm going to go and wear it.
Yeah.
It just made me laugh, and so that for me was better than a bunch of flowers for sure.
Yeah, we've got a couple quite nice websites. There's one that I used quite recently for a friend of Shelley's who's going through a cancer diagnosis at the moment, called Not Another Bunch of Flowers, and it's a load of like just little gift boxes that you can send, and you can custom build the box with like your own drinks and snacks and activity or things like that. And I think things like that are really good, because it can just land on your door without you having told someone it's coming, to some extent. And then they've got a nice little hour or two just in a box that they can do when they feel up to it or ready for it. And like I said, it's not a bunch of flowers that are dying and you have to clean up, because I didn't enjoy that bit either.
That's the thing. Like, I loved the flowers as well, and they really brightened up the room, but then there they all die and you're like, oh no. It's a metaphor for my life.
Yeah.
Someone threw me a wig and scarf party, I think, and that was before my hair had fallen out, and everyone else arrived kind of in wigs, and it was all a bit weird. It worked. I didn't end up wearing any of them.
I love that though. So it's just, you've got to have like fun in it and try and enjoy yourself as well, and find the humour and everything.
Yeah, have some good mates that you can laugh about things that afterwards.
And that are going to buy you leather catsuits.
Yeah, I need to find myself a friend like that.
Yeah, definitely.
I haven't worn it since, to be fair, but I did wear it to one of the chemos as Catwoman. I'd never look better. There you go.
Yeah.
It's funny. But the whole sort of mask and ear thing got a bit hot and sweaty, so that came off my bald head.
God, yeah, I bet. So your book is called Live Brave.
That's right.
Yeah, and you can buy it on Amazon, is that right?
You can buy it on Amazon. And the idea of it, the reason it's called Live Brave is because it's about living and obviously about being courageous and being brave and digging deep to find that strength and focus as you go through some of these tricky moments. So yeah, and like you said about the strategy, that humor in the darkness piece, I think really helped me stay brave and be courageous. But it's also about life beyond as well, you know, looking back and how does cancer change you and how did it shape you? And I think that's one of the things that it's actually given to me. It gave me the strength to leave an unhealthy relationship. And it sort of got me to focus on getting my career back on track and moving home. So yeah, lots of pluses as well.
There can definitely be positives of cancer. I think, like, obviously, you know, me and Kate would never have met, and I always say, like, I don't think I would be the person I am today if I hadn't have gone through cancer. So as much as it is awful and no one ever wants to go through it, like, it definitely does have like positives to it.
Absolutely. Although not having to shave when you're going through chemo was quite handy.
Honestly, every time I do have to shave now, I think to myself in the shower, oh my God, I really love those 6 months. It was amazing. Like,
if it wasn't for the head hair,
yes,
it would have been glorious.
Yeah. If I can just do like a half and half situation from the treatment, and I'll keep my head of hair and we'll just lose everything else, saves me time, saves me money. It was amazing. I loved it. I just didn't like being bald.
Or really sick.
Yeah, it was an interesting one. Definitely some positives. I mean, I got some new boobs, got to choose those. I have to say, looking back, I went quite LA. The surgeon I had was very American, very LA. I got back to Europe and thought, maybe this isn't quite the look I should have gone for. Sort of Parisian flat-chested look. That's not me anymore, but at least it, you know, whatever.
Well, yeah, if it works for you. I mean, if you've got it now, flaunt it, you know, that's what they say.
I thought, well, I'll just go big, balances out my bum, so that's fine. And I think that's, you know, that was the point of the book as well. You know, there's nothing better than a reframe. If you can, and I like what you said about the, you know, the joy and the humor as well. If you can reframe things, because it's a really fine line between laughing and crying. But if you can think, hang on a minute, I've got a choice here, I'm going to try and see something in that's going to help me move through it, then that's always, looking back, that was helpful.
Yeah, I'd love to just ask your opinion on something. Obviously, in the book you talk a lot about like fighting and, you know, being brave, and like cancer is this kind of battle, and I know a lot of people kind of don't necessarily like the battle talk. Obviously everyone's, you know, entitled if that's, you know, what works for some people and not for others, and I just kind of wanted to get your opinion on like how you feel about like battle talk and whether that kind of works for you.
I think it's a really interesting conversation, and I think the thing I've learned, and, you know, talking to lots of cancer survivors, patients to date, is really, it's such a personal journey.
Yeah.
And even the word journey, sometimes people don't like either, right? For me, that worked. I think probably because I was working in sports and working with athletes at the time. And so there was that competitive spirit piece, and you have to dig deep. And I just thought, you know what? Someone said to me, well, you've qualified for the Cancer Olympics. I thought, oh gosh, I'm not sure about that. I have to do it again in 4 years' time. But for me, it helped because it hurt. It really, really hurt. And you think about what athletes put themselves through, and that mindset for me was important, because not that there's ever necessarily a finish line, but there were kind of those points, you know, I had got to the point of I ended chemo, and I got to the point where I had my mastectomy, and then I had my rebuild. So for me, you know, whether it's rounds in a boxing ring or however you want to look at it, for me that helped. And, you know, I played sport, and I did sport, and I played golf. And for me, that was a good refuge to go to and to be in. And a bit like, you know, when you're doing sport, when I played golf, that was really the mindset piece. You have to be tough and strong, but you have to be easy on yourself as well sometimes. Like, it's a shot, or if something doesn't go the way you think it's going to go, then it's about picking yourself up, having that resilience, wherever you find it from, however deep you have to dig. You just, you know, I just thought, I've got to get through it one way or another. So for me, it helped. I understand that it's quite a controversial way of framing things up, but everyone's so different.
Well, exactly. Yeah, like you said, everyone's going through their own personal experience, and it's if that's what's helped you, then absolutely fantastic. And go and buy and go and read the book, I guess.
It's just very personal. So it's to anyone who's going through cancer or supporting someone who's going through cancer. And I think we touched on it a little bit. It's really about the patient deciding. About you deciding how you want to live through it and how you want to approach it and what's going to be best for you in the moment. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that changes throughout treatment, changes according to who you meet or experiences you have. So yeah, what's right for one person isn't necessarily right for someone else, for sure.
Yeah, there's so many different ways to frame it and look at it. But both Shelley and I aren't huge fans of the fighting talk as such, but mainly because we didn't really feel like we were fighting much. And I think certainly for me, I felt like I was losing an awful lot. And I was very poorly and very sick. And for me, it was just like I'm going to get up, I'm going to get through today, and we'll deal with tomorrow, rather than thinking of it as this big thing to get through. It very much for me, it was like a day by day basis.
Totally. No, I completely agree with that. And I would give myself little sort of challenges, which, looking back, like having a shower or walking around the neighborhood. And they might not seem like big challenges, but on the day they really, really are. And I think my kid remembers pushing me up the hill, because I was adamant that I would get outside and have a bit of fresh air every day if I could. I look back and I really needed her help to push me up the hill. And so for me, that was a fight. It's not necessarily, it was those little things, really, those little challenges, not the whole thing altogether. Yeah. And also I think for me, it might sound weird, but at the end of the day, I wanted to feel that I was inflicting some of that pain on myself, that I was in control of it some way. Because I think you become I felt so not victimized, but very medicalized, but also a little bit powerless. And say, I'm really in pain because I went downstairs, walked around a bit, moved my body, and that's why I'm in pain. That for me was a mindset shift that helped me. Yeah, help me get through.
Well, yeah, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us. I really love hearing people's different kind of opinions and different ways that they get through it themselves. So kind of hearing your holistic approach and all the stuff that you did alongside it it's just really interesting to get other people's perspectives and opinions. So yeah, thank you so much for coming on, and
thank you for having me.
Live Brave, it's already out on Amazon. Thank God none of us have wilted and died like flowers. If you want to share your story, we'd love to hear from you. Whether you've had cancer, you know someone that's had cancer, or you just love listening to our voices, slide into our DMs on Instagram at onelump_or2.
Or email us at onelumportwopod@gmail.com.
See you next week.
Bye!